You're listening to Heritage Radio Network.
Ever wonder how a policy that governs corn prices also decides what 40 million Americans can put on their dinner tables? SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, which has been in the news a lot lately, is the country's largest nutrition aid program, serving over 41 million people each month with about $100 billion in federal spending annually. And here's the twist. That money flows through a bill called the Farm Bill, giant legislative omnibus package that Congress renews, or supposed to renew, every 5 years to shape what we grow, conserve, and eat. That food and farm pairing didn't happen by accident. It dates back to the 1970s when lawmakers tied urban hunger programs to rural farm supports to build the coalition they needed to pass the bill at all. But now, some want to untie that link. You're listening to One Bite is Everything, connecting the food on your plate to the bigger world through farms, policies, menus, conversations, and more. I'm your host, Dana DiPrima. Today on the show, should SNAP be separated from the Farm Bill? Who's pushing for that change? Who gains? Who loses? And what does it really mean for the people growing and buying food in America? We'll break it down into 4 parts. How this unusual pairing came to be, why some want it undone, what the political math looks like on both sides, and the unexpected ripple effects, including a short but sharp look at sugar. In this episode, you'll learn why SNAP is in the Farm Bill to begin with, what happens if that link breaks, how the outcome could reshape both grocery budgets and ag policy for years to come, and we will ask, if you split the food from the farm, do you actually fix the problem or just make 2 fights instead of 1? So if you're ready to rethink what ties farms and families and why it matters more than ever, stick around for this episode of One Bite is Everything. Last week, we talked about SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, and how it shows up in real people's lives. Today, we're zooming out. We're going to connect SNAP to the Farm Bill, the giant piece of legislation that shapes what gets grown, what gets conserved, and who can afford to eat. And then we'll answer the spicy question people love to float in D.C. Should SNAP be separated from the Farm Bill? Who wants that? Who benefits? And who gets hurt? So let's start with how SNAP ended up in the Farm Bill in the first place and why that link matters. The Farm Bill is what Congress calls an omnibus bill, a big bundle that re-ups and tweaks our agricultural and food policies every 5 years or so. Over time, Congress placed nutrition programs, including SNAP, into that same package. The modern pairing dates to the 1970s when lawmakers deliberately tied urban nutrition needs to rural farm supports to build a coalition big enough to pass the whole thing. That's the origin story of today's food and farm marriage. Here's the scale. In the most recent fully scored Farm Bill, the 2018 law, nutrition programs account for roughly 3/4 of all projected spending. That's not a slip of the tongue, 3/4. The rest is divided among crop insurance, conservation, commodity supports, research, and more. That 76% range is straight from USDA's Economic Research Service and CBO projections. Let's talk about why that matters. SNAP isn't a side dish. It's the main course of Farm Bill dollars. That reality is exactly why some folks want SNAP moved out. Let's talk about who that is and why. There's a long-running conservative push to split the bill so that farm programs and food stamps get standalone votes. Think tanks like the Heritage Foundation have argued for years that combining them protects both from reform. Split them, they say, and Congress can tighten each on its own merits. In 2013, House leaders actually did peel nutrition out and passed a farm only bill, then a separate SNAP bill, before the pieces were recombined in conference for the 2014 law. That wasn't a thought experiment, it happened. Let's talk about some of the motivations because they vary. Ideologically, some want tougher work rules or smaller caseloads for SNAP, and they think separating it will make that vote easier. On the procedural side, others say separating makes each policy cleaner. On the negotiation side, splitting breaks the historic urban-rural coalition that has moved the Farm Bill for decades, which is precisely why many farm groups and anti-hunger advocates oppose a split. You'll also see periodic House or Senate proposals that rewrite SNAP's benefit formula or work requirements inside the Farm Bill package itself. That's the more common route lately. Change SNAP within the Farm Bill rather than move it out. If SNAP were separated, let's talk about where it would go. And would farmers lose support? Let's be concrete. SNAP is administered by USDA's Food and Nutrition Service. The agriculture committees in both chambers currently authorize it through the Farm Bill. Appropriators fund it annually. If Congress were to separate SNAP again, the likely near-term scenario is simply two bills and two votes, a farm-only bill and a nutrition-only bill, still under the agricultural committees unless Congress also rewired committee jurisdiction in the rules. In 2013, separation didn't move SNAP to another agency or committee. It just advanced as a standalone nutrition bill. So, would farmers lose support if SNAP is split? Not automatically. Commodity programs and crop insurance live in the farm titles and could still pass. The risk is political, not mechanical. Without SNAP in the same package, you lose the broad urban-rural vote-trading coalition that has historically carried the bill across the finish line. Fewer champions, tougher math. In short, farm programs become more vulnerable to cuts or stalemates, and SNAP becomes more vulnerable to sharper restrictions. Each side loses the other's votes. That's the coalition logic behind keeping them married. There's something bigger underneath this debate. This is an important note that I really want you to hear. The very idea that we could peel farm away from food comes from the same cultural blind spot that's made us so disconnected from what we eat. We've spent decades turning food into a product instead of a relationship, and this policy split is the bureaucratic version of that same disconnect. If we keep pulling these threads apart, we risk forgetting that food security and farm security are one and the same. Let's talk about what SNAP actually looks like right now so you can see how it plays out on the ground. In fiscal year 2024, SNAP served about 41.7 million people per month, roughly 12.3% of U.S. residents. Average benefits were about $187 per person per month in fiscal year 2024, and total federal spending was around $100 billion. Those numbers come from USDA's Economic Research Service and CRS. So, what can you buy? SNAP can't be used for alcohol, tobacco, hot prepared foods, or non-foods, but sugary items, including soda, are generally eligible. Recently, USDA has begun approving state waiver pilots that restrict sugar-sweetened beverages and candy in certain states, a real shift to test diet quality rules. On the sugar note, here's a brief but balanced point. The U.S. sugar program uses marketing allotments, tariff rate quotas, and loan support to manage supply and to keep U.S. sugar prices above world levels. This framework traces back to the 1981 Farm Bill and is administered by the USDA. That's ag policy. Meanwhile, SNAP eligibility rules historically allow purchases of sugary drinks, though some states now have USDA-approved waivers to restrict them. That's nutrition policy. The connection is Farm Bill choices influence both sides of that ledger, what's produced and what's purchasable. Well, that's enough for today's purposes. SNAP recipients can buy sugar. USDA also supports the sugar sector through long-standing farm programs. Full stop. Let's get back to the arguments for separating SNAP and the counterpoints. Policy purists say that we should vote on farm supports and nutrition assistance separately. On the reform side, advocates say that each title will get more scrutiny and more needed reforms. On cost optics, with nutrition at 75% of Farm Bill outlays, some want to contain the Farm Bill headline cost by pushing SNAP to a different track. On the counter side, coalition math says that the urban-rural coalition is how conservation, specialty crops, research, and SNAP all survive together. Splitting weakens both. There's also political risk. In recent cycles, efforts to tighten the Thrifty Food Plan updates, add work requirements, or cap deductions traveled through the Farm Bill negotiations. If SNAP stands alone, deepening the cuts is easier. The same is true on the farm side. Some supports may be easier without anti-hunger votes attached. Here's the implementation reality. Separation doesn't move SNAP out of USDA absent additional legislation. You're creating two high-stakes fights instead of one. And what happens to farmers and families under these different scenarios? In scenario A, if you keep SNAP in the Farm Bill, the status quo reauthorized, farmers keep the coalition that supports crop insurance and commodity supports. Families keep SNAP inside a large bill with many constituencies, historically more stable funding and fewer extreme swings. The budget mix there continues to show about 75% for this nutrition program. Scenario B, split up the bills, two big votes. Farmers lose urban votes as bargaining partners. Some farm provisions may face more cuts or delays. And on the family side, SNAP becomes a standalone target. Depending on the Congress, that can mean tighter work rules, lower benefits, or more categorical exclusions. In 2013, the separate SNAP bill proposed notable trims and rule changes before the Senate forced a recombine. As you know from last episode, SNAP impacts our farmers, not necessarily directly, but the spending that families have through the SNAP program impacts our farmers, our grocery stores, and the entire economy surrounding that. Here's scenario C. You can keep it together, but rewrite it internally. This is what we've seen lately. The farm side seeks a stronger safety net. The nutrition side faces debates around the Thrifty Food Plan updates or work requirements. The outcome is shaped by the same coalition math. Here are some hidden or under-discussed impacts. In local economies, SNAP dollars are federal money spent locally in grocery stores and markets. That demand supports jobs up and down the chain, including for small producers that sell through stores or authorized markets. USDA frames SNAP as a major share of USDA food assistance and tracks state variation. Think 8 to 16% of residents on SNAP in most states, higher in a few. Nutrition titles have funded produce incentives, nudging healthier purchases and channeling SNAP dollars toward fruits and vegetables. Great for specialty crop growers and those farmers that you see at your farmers markets. There's also administrative continuity. SNAP is 95% benefits by cost and administered monthly at national scale. Disruptions from shutdown fights or court-ordered stopgaps ripple fast through households and retailers. Keeping reauthorizations clean and on time really matters to families. There is some state experimentation. USDA's new waiver pilots on sugary drinks and candy mean we're entering a test and learn era for diet quality in SNAP. Expect debates over definitions, retailer implementation, and whether restrictions actually improve health outcomes. So, what do you think? Should we keep SNAP in the Farm Bill? My read, grounded in coalition history, is that the link has protected both sides. Farmers benefit from the votes of nutrition champions. Families benefit from the clout of farm state members. If you split them, you don't necessarily fix the politics, you double them, and you likely make both programs less stable. That doesn't mean no reform, it means smart reform inside the coalition. Clear guide rails on SNAP's benefit formula and the work rules based on evidence, transparent farm supports that reward real risk and real stewardship, and continued investments that connect healthy food to local producers. I think we all have to remember that food and farms are inherently connected. Let's just have a little myth busting before we close today. SNAP is exploding. In fiscal year 2024, SNAP served 41.7 million people monthly, with about $187 per person in average benefits, down from pandemic highs and consistent with economic conditions. Participation and costs move with the economy and policy changes, so no, it's not exploding. Here's another myth. If we split it, farmers get more. I'm not sure about that. Maybe in the short term. Long term, you will lose the coalition that protects crop insurance, conservation, and disaster tools when budgets tighten. Separating moves SNAP to HHS. This is another common myth. This does not happen automatically. In 2013, the separation was procedural. Still USDA, still Ag Committee, just a standalone bill. Moving it would require additional legislation and committee rule changes. That's kind of a big deal. Here's another myth. SNAP bans soda. Generally, no, it doesn't. But USDA has approved state waivers piloting restrictions on sugary drinks and candy. We're watching those experiments now. If you're going to take anything away from this episode today, it's that it's complicated. But food and farm policy were yoked together on purpose. Eating and growing are two sides of the same system. If you want resilient farms, healthy eaters, and functional local economies, you want a Farm Bill coalition big enough to carry both. So, here, it's up to you. What would you do? Should SNAP stay in the Farm Bill? We traced how this unlikely pairing came to be back in the 1970s when lawmakers realized the best way to pass farm supports was to link them with urban nutrition aid. That strategy worked, and today SNAP makes up 75% of all Farm Bill spending, supporting over 41 million Americans each month. But now, with political pressure mounting to split that bundle, both sides could find themselves more exposed. We looked at who's behind that push, what their goals are, and what really happens if you pull the bill apart. Fewer votes, higher stakes, and a riskier path for both food assistance and farm programs. We also touched on the unexpected, like how sugar policy and SNAP eligibility collide, and what that means for the broader food system. The big takeaway? SNAP and the Farm Bill were linked on purpose. That coalition has protected both farmers and families through decades of political shifts. Breaking that connection doesn't solve our food policy challenges. It likely makes them harder to fix. And here's my final note and a bit of a warning. When we disconnect farm policy from food policy, we're really formalizing something that's already gone wrong in our culture and something that we should be repairing instead. We've built an economy where eaters don't know farmers and farmers can't reach eaters. And then we wonder why the system feels broken. The truth is, we don't just need the Farm Bill and SNAP to stay linked. We need ourselves to stay linked to the food, to the land, and to each other. That connection is what keeps every bite meaningful and every farm viable. Thanks for listening to One Bite is Everything. I'm your host, Dana DiPrima. And of course, sound editing and original music is by Russell Chapa. If this episode gave you a new angle on SNAP or the Farm Bill, share it with someone who's only seeing half the picture. And be sure to subscribe so that you never miss a bite. Until next time, eat like it matters, because it does.